Program. It's a comprehensive planning document that was designed. It kind of has a touch of staging in it, a touch of field operations in it, because every day helicopters are used throughout the state, throughout the United States. They're used. In New Jersey, they're used every day. The application of the Helibase module is really designing a system that can utilize them effectively during a large-scale incident. That's really never been done before. We've called them out, used them on bits and pieces, but to integrate them into the high-level training, the approach, the disbursement of assets, it's never really been applied. Even at 9/11, we attempted to pull these assets together and utilize them. Unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of patience to fly. As everyone knows, that story has already been written. But you know, the lessons that were learned from that and applied to other mass disasters following that had moved us to the level of putting together this Helibase module, which we did ramp up, we did planning, we did staging some resources, we even did accountability and staffing. But because of the impact of it region-wide and the need for emergency evacuation and movement of patients, it became not necessary to utilize the full aspect of the module. And we often refer back to Hurricane Irene. Hurricane Irene is an excellent example to compare it to, and that just was like, to us, 5 minutes before Hurricane Sandy happened. They were just so close together. And what we had learned from Hurricane Irene was that we needed helicopters badly. And so we did roll out the staging program, the Helibase module. We had assets pre-staged throughout the state of New Jersey. We did evacuate patients by helicopter. And that was after the formation of that plan. So all our planning efforts from the past applied functionally during Hurricane Irene. We fully anticipated them being needed for Hurricane Sandy. As we saw this coming, we planned. We had telephone conference calls. We had planning documents forged. We had staff do availability. We staged regional assets so that when we did and if we needed to turn the lights on, open the doors up, hang our shingle up, we were ready to go. It was in place and ready to go operational. Most of them were isolated patient transfers that normally probably would have been accommodated at that hospital if they had an acuity of condition of the patient, but it was deemed necessary rather than keep them in that particular area, they would divert and not even feed that particular hospital in that region. So that's really the ultimate planning opportunity. When you see you have that foresight of knowing that there's going to be a challenge in that regional area, then we would actually defer from transporting patients to that area and take them to other appropriate centers to transfer the patient to get the appropriate care that they needed. There were other aerial observations, there was administrative flights, there was staff movement, there was some equipment. There's actually in recovery efforts, we brought in supplies, and especially to the Union Beach area, we provided supplies to the shelters that were there. And I would say during the recovery aspect of the event, and we say even today they're still recovering, but I would say the weeks following, days and weeks following, there were some supplies brought into those that were left homeless that were in shelters, and bring those resources in as the roads, as you know, many of them were still impassable at that point. One of the other challenges that existed was the air medical operations component rose up and started flying more, maybe not as acute patients, but the necessity to transport them because the roadways were blocked by trees down, some of them were wires down for weeks before they were able to gain access to normal thoroughfares that brought them into that area. Fuel was a problem, I think, for everyone during this event, even for the ground ambulances, the police cars, the nurses and doctors, the paramedics and EMTs just trying to get to work. That's an opportunity that I think we could probably focus on if we had that magic wand, because I think for the first time in my professional experience was the state of New Jersey put at a disadvantage just in the power level. Without power, we have nothing. So emergency power was the topic of discussion. Just at our very own location where our helicopter is based in Somerset County, we have a number of resources in place for emergency power. And we realized even those resources we had in place were not adequate enough for that long-term, dismal period of time where we had no energy, no power at all. And fortunately it happened during the fairly comfortable months of the year. It wasn't too cold, although it did get chilly a few times towards the end of that power outage. But I think if we had to wave that magic wand, it would be to really focus on emergency power opportunities that could become mobile to support that Helibase operation. It was interesting, you know, we saw this storm coming. We had several conference calls. You have to put this in perspective with school and college. My kids are college age now, and I was just getting them back to school in college and getting them situated. And I thought I had given myself enough time to get back in place to be ready for the storm hitting landfall. And as I arrived, literally probably around 5:30, 6 o'clock in the afternoon, as the storm is increasing intensity in New Jersey, I felt it in Pennsylvania. I was coming through Ohio. And so I was driving down the road as many FEMA and emergency vehicles were driving east. I was going with that cadre. And as I arrived at home, literally, I can't believe it, trees were falling around my house.
Really?
And that's when I remember saying to my family, I said, I got to get out of Dodge. I got to get my stuff together. I'm already pre-scheduled for the nighttime shift. I'm going to be the administrator that's on call at our facility in Newark. I need to get in there as soon as possible, make sure operations are running. And as I'm gathering my equipment and my stuff, and I had everything pre-staged, but I had to change vehicles. I'm pulling out literally one end of my street got blocked by a tree. Had to turn, go the other direction, just got out in time, or I would never have made it out of my house. Huge, huge trees would have been blocking my exit. I made it to the major highway, Route 22. I felt I could not get up to 78 because the trees were falling everywhere. Now I'm at the heat of the storm and thinking I'm not obeying any of the recommendations anybody said to get in place as soon as possible. So I'm fighting some of the weather, moving east to my operational base. And as I was driving through the Somerset County area on Route 22, I'm in the greater North Plainfield area, and every single light is out. The sky is lit in green and blue hues as transformers are blowing up left and right. It was surreal to see it. And I do remember lights at the left side of the road as I'm coming down this two-lane isolated highway with a barrier. All the traffic lights are out. And I'm doing about 30 miles an hour. I can't do much more than that with the wind and the debris on the road and trying to miss everything. And this car attempted to pull out in front of me, so I yielded to him so he could cut across traffic. And I saw him moving at a very, very fast rate of speed, something flying through the air. I wasn't quite sure what it was. And it struck his car, and it stuck into his car, and I could barely see what it was. So I put my headlights on his car, I pulled up, and I could see that there was a stop sign. That with the stop sign sticking out, the actual stand itself that would be attached to the ground in through his windshield, and I thought, oh my gosh, this poor guy, you know, he's not alive. He's no way he could have survived this. So I was able to get out of my vehicle. I got as close as I could. I went up, and then I found the gentleman inside, scared out of his wits. He was an elderly person. The car is now straddling the east and the westbound lanes. And I said to him, I said, are you okay? And he was very scared, to the point where you know, he was embarrassed and he needed to get out of there. He was, you know, very emotional, and I said, I don't want to send a bad message here, but no one's coming. There's no one going to be able to get here for you. Or if you're okay, I should get you off the highway. And he said, well, I can't get off the highway. I got this sign in my windshield. So I climbed up on his hood and I removed the sign out of his windshield, jumped down, put it down, and he sped away as quick as I said hello to him. Never even got his name. But it was moments like that were frightening. I can tell you, that, you know, most of us can say that was a scary experience. That was a little scary. That was a little frightening. This was probably the worst dangerous storm, the worst dangerous conditions I've ever seen myself in, and because it was uncontrollable. And the only prevention you could have was to eliminate yourself from being outside, you know. And I had to go to work. We all had to go to work. So it was actually, that was probably the most scariest moment I think in my career, driving that road back to Newark. Thinking, am I going to get there? You know, is the car going to break down? Am I going to get 2 flat tires? You know, because there's debris was everywhere. Am I going to get a stop sign on the way? You know, it was crazy. An honor to work with everyone, you know, from the held-based level to the mass care level, you know, to the unbelievable working with people from out of our state, you know, people from down south, from Pennsylvania. I drove next to Pennsylvania ambulances that were moving eastward. They ended up staying and working with us in the state for several days, and it was an honor to work with all of them.